Hello and welcome to the Automotive Manufacturing Evolution Summit Live. I'm Rich Logan, Senior Content Producer at Automotive Manufacturing Solutions and Ultima Media. Thank you so much for joining me. The electrified future is fast becoming the present as vehicle makers and new and existing players right across the value chain are investing at record levels to develop and produce electric vehicles and components and bring them to the market. The transition to alternatively fueled vehicles has become a necessity for long-term survival and success, and ambitious goals and timelines have been set by industry and governments alike. But the road to electrification is far from easy, with a myriad of new complexities and challenges from the manufacturing and supply chain sectors to overcome. Scania is paving the way for the electric truck market, and joining me now, I'm delighted to have Mathias Wijkström, plant manager at Scania's Sodertalje plant, I hope I got that right, who's here to share some insights and experiences from Scania's production shift to electric vehicles. Mathias, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Richard. Hi, everybody. My name is Mathias Wijkström, and today I will have the pleasure to talk about e-mobility production in final assemblies for trucks. And as you can see, I'm working at Scania, and I have been doing so for the last 20 years. And currently, I'm heading the final assembly production line here in Sodertalje, as Rick said. And we are at the moment producing battery electrical vehicles, plug-in hybrids, and internal combustion engines on the same main line. And today, I will speak about 10 minutes, starting about a little bit the differences where we are right now with truck production for electrical vehicles compared to cars. Then I will go a little bit about the challenges that this gives, and finally run up with some key takeaways that we have learned so far at Scania. And after that, of course, there will be the possibility for you to ask me some questions. So I hope you enjoy this session. So first, 155 versus 1,325,000. What does this stand for? This is actually the number of heavy trucks registered last year in Europe compared to cars and vans registered in Europe. So you can see that we are in totally different parts of the volume ramp up when you look at heavy trucks compared to cars. Of course, there's always more cars sold than trucks, but still this low number is a challenge. I will come back to that later on. Also, variant versus standard. I think here is one important thing that when we look at the truck, a truck is a much more tailor-made product for the customer compared to a car. We don't really have that many challenges. This means that for the truck industry at the moment, we are working with pretty immature products. Of course, the full spec is not open, but it is a challenge that we have a very low number of identical trucks. Last but not least, machine versus accessory. And I would say a truck is the machine. Of course, a car could be seen as a machine as well, but a truck, it needs to operate, it needs to have the right cost and quality levels for our customers to be able to make their business profitable. And I think here is a difference in the new product, where we could see for car manufacturing that there was quite a substantial number of customers that bought cars as an accessory to make a statement to show who am I. We see a little bit of that in trucking as well, but it's not as evident. And this, of course, stops the volume ramp a little bit. So moving on. This brings me to the next picture then. In truck production, based on what I just said, the established companies then need to find a way to balance an immature product in our production lines without giving too much disturbances and thereby cost to the current program. And also handle everything that comes with a double program. So, and why is this? Why don't we build the greenfield? I would say the biggest reason for doing this is the responsibility that production has in the PD process. The responsibility to give feedback to the PD process and R&D and purchase, of course, how to design a product that the cost level and the quality level is also okay in a high volume pace. And the only way with the low volume as we have at the moment is to bring that into the old lines. And this, of course, is then a big positive thing, I would say, for established company compared to new startups that don't really have this possibility to test the product in a high volume scenario, since the volume is so low. But this, of course, it doesn't come easy. We approximately we say that it's around 1/3 of the assembly sequence when you compare the battery electrical vehicle and then internal combustion engine is different. It means that you have to have multiple tools and multiple places for parts. Of course, it will be also extra articles. We look about part numbers increasing 30 to 50%. We also look at a lot of new pre-assembly that takes space to be able to run both programs at the same time. And of course, the immature products give stop time that affects the result of the total factory. To round this up, I think maybe one of the biggest challenges is, of course, the operators. You need to have skilled people that are able to run not only the current program, but also the future program and handle a much bigger number of variations and new number of skills. So if I move on here, in my last picture, I said that I show that established company might have an edge to new competition since they can then try the new product from a production point of view in a high volume scenario. However, with this picture, I would like to show one of, I think, the biggest challenges for a established company, and that is to find the balance between urgent. And into urgent, I put the current program, the current business model, so on. And important, that means the future business model or the future product. And of course, right now it is a challenge. I think everybody hears about the semiconductor crisis. We've been through Corona. It has been a lot focus on urgent. And if you are in both of these, it is a challenge to balance those. And I think maybe even more risky for established company is that you top management and middle management, they are brought up in the current business model. If the established companies are not able to balance these and also focus on what is important and what is a bit unknown, they are doomed. On the other hand, if you have a startup, you have the benefit of only focusing on the new product or the new business model, and could focus all your resources on that. And that is, of course, an edge. So, to round this up, what we have learned so far, and if I start on the top left on my screen, you see a man then lying on the floor. What we have seen, it's actually not that different when we look at the assembly of an electrical vehicle at final assemblies, at least compared to conventional combustion engine. We see that a lot of the things that we have, the knowledge that we have collected in our production system, is also applicable for electrical vehicles. And the skills that we have in assembly that we can use and we can feedback that into the PD process, making the next generation of electrical trucks even better when it comes to cost and quality. However, there is one big differences, and that I would say is on my top right corner, is of course with electrical safety. That is something that should not be underestimated. It's a new competence and knowledge that you really has to master in your factory, and you have to build an organization to handle that, and that should not be underestimated. And that is of course also true for other parts of the company, like service and R&D. This is not something that we needed to work with that much before. And to round this up, I had to go to the picture in the middle here. It's taken from the celebration we had earlier this year when we celebrated the first electrical vehicle running on the main line. And in the end, this is what it all comes down to. It's not the strategy. It's about the people, and I'm really blessed that here at Scania I have really competent, skilled, committed people that makes the change and drive the shift. So, with that said, I'm pretty much through my presentation, and I give over to you, Rick, for some Q&A. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Matthias, and yeah, some fascinating insights there. So thanks very much for sharing some bits and pieces that we'll certainly delve a little bit deeper into. And just a shout to the audience as well. So if there are questions that you have for Matthias around Scania's electrification journey, then please do use this opportunity to pop them in the chat. You'll find that on the right-hand side of the GRIP platform. And yeah, but I have plenty of questions myself. So let's dive in. Matthias, perhaps you can give us some idea of kind of scale in terms of the volume plans for EVs at your plant at Sodertalje, and then perhaps across the group as well. What sort of numbers are you running in terms of electric vehicles right now?
Yeah, Rich, you saw the numbers for 2020 there. That was the total vehicle sold in all of Europe, and that is then divided also to other players. When we look at 2021, we have, of course, more than doubled, or that is maybe 3 times higher, but we are still on a very low number. In my factory, I have the flexibility to produce both electrical and PHEVs and HEVs, so to speak, together with the internal combustion engine. But since I built everything customer built, I'm not sure what the customer will order tomorrow, but I would say that we round maybe 1 to 5 electrical trucks a day. So it's still on a very low total number in the total production.
Absolutely. And in terms of the impact of introducing those EV builds on the same line, has that impacted your overall sort of daily output, weekly output, total volume, including ICE vehicles?
It's a good question, Rich. We thought it would be, since we have we look at electrical vehicles common to what we call special orders, that we know that we have a higher number of disturbances because they are, from an R&D point of view, not as tested. So we anticipated that and took down a little bit of the output and balanced that to the other sides. But it's been going better than expected, actually. So we see that we are almost on the same level. But also we took down a little bit of the takt time. We are not on the same low level as before. So I would say we are not running on full production speed but still on a higher level than we would need for only making electrical vehicles.
Okay, well, it sounds like yeah, excellent kind of progress being made there. Always good to be ahead of target on that. And where do you see the sort of the tipping point happening when EV production starts to exceed traditional ICE vehicles for your plant, and then perhaps across the group as well?
I think, Rich, that is the 100 million question that everybody needs to answer. And I would say there is no answer to that one. There are, of course, plans that we share with market and so on, but there is always a customer behind. And I think the tipping point will, of course, be when the TCO, the total cost of ownership, is better for electrical vehicles compared to combustion engine vehicles, and that can be different timing for different segments. Of course, we have urban deliveries where we have other incentives that is driving this as well. But it will probably last a little bit longer for some segments like long haulage. It also depends a lot about the development of the batteries itself. What is the performance on that? You could also, of course, argue for some customers in some areas it will be sustainability that drives it. But usually it is when the total cost is then on the same level or cheaper that we will have this transition. And it will also be very different for different regions of the world. If we look here at Europe, for one example, there are differences within Europe, but if we then go to some of the other areas of the world where we sell trucks, it will take longer time, probably.
Yeah. So do you think it's a question, and this was a question from the audience, it's a question of when, not if,
Yes.
electric vehicles will surpass ICE vehicles?
I think it's when, not if, since we see how it's also looking for the car industries where you see people as driving electrical cars. They see also the benefit with the quietness, not only sustainability from a CO2 perspective. But then there are some other things as well. How is it with the possibilities to get charged? Because I think you cannot only sell a product. I think here's a difference compared to what we did in the past, because here the infrastructure is all set. You have to sell a solution to the customer where charging is possible, where you have services, everything. I think we will maybe step a little bit away from the traditional selling a truck in the future.
Interesting, and perhaps sticking with infrastructure, particularly Scania's infrastructure. Now, how well placed are you to scale up electric vehicles, either at the plant or wider, further afield? Do you have a competitive advantage here?
I think we have a good. What we're looking into was the picture I showed there. I think it was slide 3, where we look into having the possibility to have fast flexibility between ICE and BEV for the first generation of electrical vehicles. I think that will be key, not because scaling when the tipping point comes, it will go quite quickly, and then you will have limitations in your flows. It will be limitation of parts. It will be limitations of your own factories and the people that are trained in this. So have a possibility where you can, when you can exchange an internal combustion engine for an electrical one. I think that is key. And here is a big difference, I would say, compare cars. In car industry, the volume is so high, so it's only to build a new factory and have that ready. We don't really have that privilege in trucking industries. Most of the big makers have 1 or maybe 2 factories in Europe, and to build a second one on the side, it's of course a huge investment. So, but we will see different path for going forward. But I believe in flexibility and being close to the customer, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. That's certainly going to be key. And in terms of defining quality We know quality is obviously one of the core ingredients that makes Scania such an in-demand product. But how do you define the quality and those best practices around that for electric vehicles? Is there much differentiation between that and ICE vehicles in the production?
It is a lot of new parts. It has to be tested, of course, and we also have to. A difference, I think, in car industry, a lot of the quality lies in automated system because you don't have the variations. In truck industry, of course, a lot of the built-in qualities is made by machines, but you still depend a lot about the people working in the factories, that they are skilled and they know what is right and wrong, and that they have the quality feeling to stop if they see something that is not okay, and that we test them in the right way. I think one benefit we have right now is that instead of building, because the as you saw, the volume 155 for Europe total, that means that you can build that as prototype, but being able to build the BEV trucks on the main line, that also assures quality, because there we have a lot more quality systems built in. So I think that is, of course, a benefit for us.
Yeah.
But then coming on, what is then quality for the customer? What will be important in the future? I think in the beginning, of course, how the batteries are working and so on will be extremely important to have the acceptance of the product. But looking forward 10 or 15 or 20 years ahead, I'm not sure that battery will be considered that way. Maybe it's just a commodity that you don't really think that much about because it always works. So it's a bit hard to say, Rick, actually. And it could be different during different phases of the ramp up as well.
Yeah, you mentioned in your presentation, the R&D, the feedback cycle that's crucial to play in the manufacturing process. That plays a role in the design of the vehicle and the future of the products. Can you explain a little bit about that, sort of the management, delve a little bit deeper into that? How do those feedback loops work? What does that operation look like? How reactive, and how quickly can the changes sort of be made based on the feedback that you provide?
It's a good question. I think a lot of people think of production as the only reason to live is to make it a good quality and a low cost. But I think if you have a high-end product as we are using with trucks, I think also it's extremely important to feedback to R&D and how to do that. I think it's R&D, it's not the PD process. The PD process that runs from the customer and then the way back to R&D. And I think that is the first way to look at it. And we have a part of that, and that is looking at, okay, this is the way that we intend to do this, but could we do this in another way so that it will be easier to assure quality, or that we could have a lower cost? And for to put all that demand on the designer, I think that's not possible. Our role here is to take the knowledge that we have from assembly trucks or machining or whatever it is, and have a good feedback, being part, take our responsibility in the PD process, and be part of that, and front load. I think that is the most important thing, and not sit and wait until the product ends up in my lap, so to say. And I think part of that is running an unmature product on the line. You can do a lot of testing, of course, in virtual reality and so on, but in the end, it is something else with also coming back to the big number of variation that you have in truck industry. It's we cannot foresee everything. We are much better today than we were 20 years ago, but still being there, talking to the designers, having the designers close by, I think that is a benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the sort of the low volumes. Obviously, within the Volkswagen Group, Scania sits alongside Tracer and MAN, Navistar. Is there collective knowledge sharing around electrification, be it in production, design of the products itself, or are you sort of tending to work in silos? And where does Scania fit it in this position?
No, but I would say start with, of course, with Volkswagen. It's a huge benefit of being close to them. I think everybody in this forum has noticed the ambition that Volkswagen and the Volkswagen Group has with Audi, Porsche, and so on. So we are, of course, being very close to them, seeing what they have done, looking how they look on production of batteries and final assemblies and so on. Although it's not exactly the same, we can use and reuse some of it. Then, of course, talking to some of the colleagues in the groups, and it used to be competition. It has taken some time. But of course, it is a benefit. But that is, of course, true also for the other big players, that we can share ideas and see what has been working in the different parts and be able to. And we see also that, Rick, that also when we look at the components, we are starting to share components more and more within the group as well. We see that, I would say, mostly on the internal combustion engine, but I would be surprised if we don't see the same going forward also for electrical vehicles. But we are supposed to be the first brand out with new things, so to say.
Okay, so the pressure is on your shoulders.
Yeah. The pressure or the possibility.
That's it, the opportunity.
Yeah. But I think that is important. That we try to talk to that with the people here. That a lot of things, old people doesn't like change, but being in automotive at this time, where we have this huge turnover, where we talk about autonomous, we talk electrical vehicles, it's something that you will remember for the rest of your life, being part of this big technical transition, how that affects people, how we can make them grow, how they can take new steps in the organization. It's really a blessing, I would say.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it. We've had a number of questions come in, so I'm going to try and get through these as many as I can. So, how did your supply chain react to the new components in terms of readiness? So, was the line feed an issue? So, talking about bringing in new components for electric vehicles, impacting the line feed, perhaps different sequencing, and maybe that's a segue onto Scania's battery pack assembly and module assembly as well.
Yes, it is. It has been some challenges with this as well, of course. And we have been acting a little bit like our colleagues at what we learned about from Toyota is that we don't go and tell our suppliers that they are bad. We try to help them instead. We try to, because here we also see a couple of new suppliers that maybe doesn't have the experience of running high volume production since they come from another business. We talk about Northvolt, for example. So we are then trying more to help them, because the production system in itself, it's not brain surgery. It's quite easy, but if you have not done that and used that before, it is something that you need to apply to be able to run a factory.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, go on.
No, but and I also see some of the things that I mentioned it a little bit, like I would see in this part of the PD process or an amateur product, it could also be interesting from a speed point of view to insource a couple of the products that might be a commodity in 5, 10, or 15 years from now, but we don't know. But to be able to learn, coming back to what is our mission here, to learn how to produce, it could be faster to give that feedback loop and to design. Of course, we're using suppliers as well, but in some cases, we are actually insourcing some parts now.
Yeah, and are you able to share any examples of where you're sort of vertically integrating?
I think one of the most obvious one is battery, the battery factory, not the cell production itself. But that is one big thing that we are doing now, to have part of the to be able to make the variation, to be able to build prototypes in a faster way in-house, to have a closer feedback loop with R&D. But I would not say that is something that would be important for the customers in 5-10 years from now. It could be something that is a commodity. We should produce what is important for our customers in sense of quality, or when we can do it better than the competition, of course.
Yeah, a couple more questions I want to get through. Make sure our audience has their answers, their questions answered. How many parts of your assembly line needed to be changed to build electric vehicles? So obviously you have them running simultaneously or on the same line. Are you seeing sort of wholesale changes? I know you said the kind of core competencies around the skill was sort of fundamental to this transition, and that's been a success at Scania. But are there any sort of infrastructure changes or module changes within the assembly line?
I think it's a good and valid question. I can explain it like this. It depends a little bit of the product itself. I would say the first generation of electrical vehicles that we run, it's little bit based on the ICE concept, the internal combustion engine. There is less change, so that we learn and get it into the system. Then that will follow by a bigger change where we see how the product will look like, and I would say a period where we have quite big changes of the production lines. And I think in the end there might be also a total built over of the factory to make it 100% suitable for electrical vehicles. But here's I think a big difference compared to car, when you can start up with a greenfield right away. But since the volume and since also the product years or the product, it's a little bit longer in use than I would say than a car. It will be a difference. And I also said that it also by taking that approach, there's a big risk otherwise that you built it wrong, since we don't really know how the electrical vehicle will look in 5-10 years from now. Will we have motors on each axles like in a Tesla, or is it a two-wheeler? No one really knows at the moment. So to put in too much money in that, so you try to make compromises right now with investment, but be able to produce it in the most efficient way. And on top of that, of course, when will this happen? Will it happen 2025 or 2027 or 2030? That is, of course, also on top of that.
Yeah, well, I certainly hope you've asked for a crystal ball for Christmas.
Yes.
I think we could all do with one of those coming up. A couple more questions. How important is automated quality control for your plant right now, and will it gain importance due to the electrification process and evolution in the next 5 to 10 years? And I can sort of piggyback on the back of that. Are you seeing any other emerging trends from this transition of electrification, or is it an opportunity to include new technologies in the production process, be it AI or machine learning, or is that a sort of a step too far at this stage?
I think we have some steps to take before that, Rich. But I think to get back to the first question there, will it be more with electrical vehicles? Yes, I would say yes. Today, I think the driver to have more automated and more Pokayokis or controlled the tools that is based on quality, and that we have seen, of course, in cars. But in cars, you don't have not even close to the same number of tools. But one thing that is very different is the safety issues. We have now introducing some assembly that never can go wrong to ensure the safety of the operators, since we have high voltage batteries, and the batteries are you cannot imagine how big they are compared to a car battery. But you just imagine a truck 60-ton running it will be a lot of batteries coming onto the truck, of course. That will and the weight of those is also, of course, so that is, I think that is a driver that will forces some of the truck manufacturers that are maybe not that digital right now to take the last step.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And one last but popular question that's been upvoted, talking about fuel cell electric vehicles. We talked about we don't necessarily know what that sort of future of kind of new mobility looks like, what the products kind of look like yet. But in terms of the infrastructure for that, the addition and requirements for fast chargers. How is Scania kind of defining fuel cell electric vehicle within your platform and your product portfolio?
Yeah.
Where does this sit?
It's a good question there. And to answer that, I've actually produced fuel cell trucks as well. We did it for a company called ASCO in Norway 2 years ago. So we have that portfolio as well. But we see it more as a niche for trucking. And the reason for that is two, actually. One, you lose a lot of the energy converting to fuel cells instead of using it in the battery itself. And the second one, we think that other industries, like, for example, airplanes and other steel plants, will be the ones that buys a lot of the fuels needed for the fuel cells. So they will have a bigger possibility to build up that fuel cells that will be needed. So we think we are putting a lot of course into the batteries, but we are looking, of course, because a lot of the competitors are looking a bit different on that one. So here we're looking into different business models, but there are some niches, and niches could be 10% to 15% of the market. So it's not small things. But for the big scope, we think that it will be battery electrical vehicles. But here we also have political reasons coming behind that, of course. Who will control the batteries and so on? And we saw, for example, our Japanese car industries are betting a lot on the fuel cells in the past. Now they are turning around a little bit. For example, Toyota as well there. But I think there will be a mix. And I also think that we will have the old internal combustion engine for quite some time as well. You could run that, for example, on biogas, and you will end up with the same CO2 as you have for electrical ones if you have green energy. So there will be a period here, I would say, for the coming maybe 20 or 30 years, where we have a mix of different solutions for different applications and different parts of the world. So it will be a challenge for the makers to have products in every range, and that will not be possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you mentioned the challenges there, but let's finish on opportunities. So, final thoughts from you, Mathias, please, on the opportunities you see in the market when it comes to electrifying automotive production, be it suppliers, providers, or manufacturers like yourselves. Final thoughts on that, please.
No, I think I have to come back to. I think you said it's a big challenge. I think we should see it as a big opportunity. I see it as of course, the best job I ever had, being part of driving the change, being part of a better future, and I think everybody that are interested in that should actually go to automotive at the moment. We are usually looked on as one of the big CO2 bandits, so to say, but here we really have the possibility to make something really, really good for the future, for our future generations. So I think that's what it's all about, the purpose.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, that's a great note to end on. So, Mathias, thank you so much for your time. You're sharing your expertise, and we wish you all the best for the remainder of the year. Thanks again, and thanks to our audience for your fantastic questions. Do stay engaged, keep the questions coming in throughout the sessions, throughout the day. Plenty more to come here on the AME Summit Live. I'm Rich Logan. Thanks for tuning in.
Car buyers Buyers today expect greater levels of customization for their vehicles than ever before. ABB's new pixel paint technology gives manufacturers a simple, fast and cost-effective solution to meet this demand. Pixel paint removes the need for manual masking of panels. It removes double cycle time for two-tone paint jobs. ABB's system reduces costs. ABB Pixel Paint's inkjet head features more than 1,000 nozzles. ABB's new Pixel Paint technology offers greater levels of customization for vehicles than ever before.